Fairytale, Thumbelina. Once upon a time, there lived a lonely woman. She dreamed so much of having a child that she went to an old witch for help.
Take this seed, put it in a flower pot, and you'll see what happens,
said the witch. The woman did as she was told, and a lovely flower, which looked kind of like a tulip, grew from the seed. In the very center of the flower, on a tiny chair, there sat a beautiful little girl. She was so tiny, no larger than a thumb, that the woman called her Thumbelina. A walnut shell served as her bed, a rose leaf her blanket, and delicate violet petals a mattress. One night, while Thumbelina was peacefully sleeping in her little bed, a giant toad hopped into the room. She grabbed the shell with the girl and jumped out of the window into the garden. There was a river nearby with marshy shores. There, right in the slime, the old toad lived with her ugly son. The son really liked the pretty little maiden in the shell, but all he could say was, "Croak, croak, croak." There were many water lilies growing in the river. Their broad leaves floated on the water like boats. The toad placed the nutshell with Thumbelina on the largest leaf, and together with her son, she went home to do the cleaning. Poor Thumbelina woke up early in the morning, looked around and was very upset. There was water all around, and the girl didn't know how to reach the shore. Soon, the old toad appeared and said, "Meet my son. He will be your husband." Croak, 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 added her ugly son. Thumbelina burst into tears. She didn't want to live in a marsh together with the toad and her ugly son. The little fish felt sorry for the girl and quickly gnawed the stem of the leaf on which the girl sat. The leaf floated off down the stream, further and further away. Now there was no way the toad could catch up with Thumbelina, but then a large cockchafer flew by. He saw Thumbelina, grabbed her by the waist, and flew with her into a tree. And the lily leaf floated away down the river. The cockchafer seated the girl on the biggest green leaf, gave her some honey from the flowers to eat, and told her that she was very pretty. But when his neighbors, other cockchafers, came to visit, they didn't like Thumbelina at all. The lady cockchafers looked at Thumbelina from head to toe and said, she has a waist? She looks like a human being. She doesn't have any feelers. How ugly. No. She only has 2 legs. What a pity. What a pity. The cockchafer believed his friends and decided that he doesn't like Thumbelina anymore. He flew down with her from the tree and left the girl on a daisy. Let her go where she wants. During the whole summer, Thumbelina lived all alone in the forest until the cold autumn, and then the winter arrived. The birds flew away to warmer countries, the flowers withered, and the big leaf under which Thumbelina slept shriveled up into a stalk. The girl was cold and hungry. Shivering, Thumbelina wandered on the snow-covered field until she saw the den of a field mouse. The mouse lived there in warmth and comfort because she had stored lots of grains and other foods.
You poor thing,
the mouse pitied Thumbelina.
You can stay with me, but you must clean my rooms and tell me interesting fairy tales. I like them very much.
While Thumbelina decides which fairy tales to tell the mouse, let's recall the toad and her son. The toad's son was ugly and too lazy to talk. What words did he know? Cock-a-doodle-doo, kook-koodok, croak, croak, croak. Right, of course. Croak, croak, croak. Subscribe to our channel. There are many more fairy tales waiting for you. Thumbelina got along really well with the mouse until her neighbor the mole came to visit them. He was a very respectable gentleman in a velvet fur coat. He lived underground and never came up to the surface. The mole was much richer than the mouse, and he hated the sun, flowers, and birds. and he always spoke ill of them because he had never seen them. A short time before, the mole dug a long passage underground from his house to the mouse's door and invited the neighbors for a walk.
Surprise!
But what horror! In the very middle of the tunnel, a swallow lay motionless. The poor bird was frozen. Its wings were pulled closely to its sides, its eyes were shut, and its feet were drawn up under its feathers. Thumbelina felt so sorry for the bird that she couldn't even sleep at night. The girl took a soft carpet and came to the swallow to cover it up and say goodbye. "Oh, dear bird, thank you for your wonderful singing during the summer when the sun was warm and the grass was green." Suddenly, the girl heard the bird's heart beating. It was alive, only numbed with the cold. Thumbelina was so happy. She wrapped the swallow even more tightly and even brought it her own blanket. With each passing day, the swallow became stronger and stronger, and Thumbelina brought it seeds and water in a flower petal. When spring came, the bird got ready to fly away and asked the girl to go with it. But Thumbelina didn't want to upset the old mouse, so she stayed. The girl was sad without the swallow, which she had grown very fond of, and then the mole came to woo her.
Nice.
And the wedding was set for autumn. And although Thumbelina had absolutely no wish to marry the boring mole and move into a deep hole underground, there was nothing she could do. When the wedding day arrived, Thumbelina came out to take one last look at the sun, and she saw the swallow again. It was going to fly away to warmer countries, and Thumbelina decided to go with it. The girl and the bird flew for a long, long time. It was so cold at first that Thumbelina had to hide under the bird's soft feathers, but it grew warmer and warmer. The sun shone brighter and brighter. Grapes and oranges grew everywhere. Colorful butterflies fluttered in the air. On the shore of a beautiful lake, there stood an ancient palace, and lovely flowers bloomed all around. The swallow placed Thumbelina on a white rose petal, in the center of which the tiny elf king was sitting. He was no bigger than Thumbelina, but wore a crown, and transparent wings fluttered at his shoulders. The Elf King fell in love with Thumbelina at first sight and asked her to marry him. But all the elves thought her name was rather ugly, so they decided to call her Maya. Well, my little friends, that's how a kind girl overcame all life's hardships and became queen of the elves and a flower goddess. And remember, you must always help those in need. Not only swallows, but also your parents, your granny, and grandpa. Genuine kindness is always rewarded.